Hello, you're welcome along to the Tackling Sport podcast, and we are talking after an Ireland victory for the first time in a long time. It's Daniel Hussey here, joined alongside me by my brother Sean. Sean, we're talking, as I said, after Ireland went 3-0 away from home, so it's going to be a positive enough podcast, surely, isn't it?
Yeah, first competitive win of the Stephen Kenny era, and it's a long time coming. But I have to say, I'm delighted for Stephen Kenny, and you can see by the goal celebrations how much it means to him and the backroom staff, and at least they've got that monkey off their back now.
Yeah, it reminds me of Mikel Arteta celebrating the Spurs goals, doesn't it?
Mm. Well, I think a lot of people probably don't comprehend how much pressure Stephen Kenny's on. Like whatever Stephen Kenny does after the Ireland job, this is the biggest job he'll ever get in football. And that's not down to his managerial, but that's just down to him being the manager of his country. And it hasn't gone the way it started. The whole process behind it was, you can look back and wonder what were the merits behind it. And Stephen Kenny coming halfway through a European qualification campaign, and whether Mick McCarthy should have been allowed to see it out. And there was all these question marks, a real big turnover in the squad. A lot of lads who aren't playing at the level where we've seen players in the past, and he's had obviously massive difficulties with his own health, but in terms of COVID and the complications that's brought, everything. So it does feel like, you know, how with the fans back, certainly the last game in the Aviva, there just seems to be a little bit more feel good factor around them, and I think that's shown with 20 odd thousand having a sellout really for a friendly, against Qatar, and albeit it's still restrictive crowds, but I think that just shows you that people, the vast majority of people still want them to get time and hopefully
Mm.
build on the win on Saturday night.
Yeah, so before we maybe get into the game and some of the moments and key moments, I suppose you were kind of saying during the game and after the game that you're starting to see somewhat of a basis of a team, and we all know it's been well documented, through various reasons that Kenny hasn't quite been able to get a basis of a team through injuries, COVID, but kind of the excuses are kind of over now. But you are seeing some sort of a basis of a team. What I kind of find is there's a good mixture of the young players, the likes of Gavin Bazunu, Oma Benedete, but you've also got the experienced players as well. And there is a good mix. We're not like a million miles away, although there's a long way to go, obviously.
Yeah, I think it would just be interesting to see how what happens when, in a couple of years' time, or maybe even in a 6-8 months' time, with the likes of Nathan Collins, obviously Dara Shea coming back from injury, um, Enda Stevens, who's had issues. You know, what happens with him in November? Does he get a few more games at club level? Does he come in a left wing back instead of McLean? So there is a few options for him. Obviously the fitness of and lack of game time for Conley would worry Kenny. But like I said, when Robinson's fit, there does seem like a little bit more of a basis of a team there, and you saw parts of it on Saturday night. The midfield too, I thought Hendrick was pretty good. Like, I mean, it's always difficult when you score early like that, and you haven't won a lot. You don't kind of keep attacking. You kind of are a little bit passive, and that's what happened. And Azerbaijan had a lot of the ball, but no, they never really threatened until the last 15, 20 minutes when Ireland sat deeper. So it's just one of those performances where I was watching the game. I had to keep telling myself how poor Azerbaijan were, because they were really sloppy in possession. They gave the ball away countless times. They were just, really poor for that level. And Ireland kind of capitalised. And, the first goal for Ireland does seem so important, because when you go 1-0 down, you're not sure if Ireland are going to score twice. And that's been the problem in those, the game against Luxembourg and Azerbaijan. And it's been difficult. But hopefully that gives a little bit of confidence. And certainly after the week Robinson had, for him to get a couple of goals, and a really important one at the start, might
Mm.
just give him and Ireland a bit of confidence. And his involvement is crucial for Ireland going forward, because he had started the season really well for West Brom. Obviously picked up COVID again, well away with Ireland, and it's like I said, he's a really good player, and I think he's quite a streaky player. He goes through stages where everything happens for him, and then he can go on a real barren run, and he's done that at club and country over the last few years. But he does seem like under the new West Brom manager, Vladimir Ismail, he's starting to get back to a bit of form.
Yeah, and so talk us through that first half, and you've touched up a lot of the points there in terms of Callum Robinson, the streakiness, getting those 2 goals was crucial. But would you be a bit concerned either side of that goal? Because we got the goal, what was it, after a few minutes, and it did seem to be like just a classic Ireland problem under previous managers where we just sat off deep and allowed Azerbaijan to have more possession. And there were a few half chances, maybe 1 or 2, where Gavin Bazuna was in the right position, made the saves look easy. But, in that middle period of the first half, you have to be concerned overall that, I don't know if we're almost shocked by getting taken the lead. Again, this is like a trait that Irish teams have had for a long time, but would you be a bit concerned about that?
Yeah, I think it's probably indicative of a side that hasn't won a lot together. And I was reading stuff from journalists that were over there that Duffy was trying to get the team up the pitch, and I think that's just natural when, like I said, you haven't had a competitive win, you're away from home, and you drop off those few yards, and you kind of allow Azerbaijan a bit of time and space on the ball. And obviously, if you do that to Portugal next month, it'll be a different story. But I think we got away with it from that regard. But I think it was just natural that when you score early, it's not the best time to. There's never a bad time to score, but it's not the best time to score. And you did feel like Ireland just dropped off, and that second goal was always going to be crucial. And even at stages in the second half, you thought maybe even the third goal was going to be crucial. But it was just one of them. Like it is a team that hasn't won a lot. It's taken a lot of stick, rightfully so. In some regard, it's not been a settled camp, if you like. It's not been a settled squad. There's been a lot of changes, a lot of people dropping out with injuries and COVID related issues, and it just, I felt like after that Ogbene goal went in, and the last few minutes just felt like the weight had been taken off their shoulders, and they could relax a little bit at full time. But I wouldn't be too worried, because we've seen Ireland play well in patches under Stephen Kenny, and we probably saw a little bit more of a reserved side, a little bit more of an organised side in the first half after we scored. And I don't necessarily think that's a bad thing, because they started the game pretty well, and obviously got a great goal. Good attack and play by McLean and Horgan, and there was runners there for Robinson to just get a shot away. So there is an element of both to that, and I just think when we scored, the pressure, they just haven't won a lot together, and that's just natural. And especially when you have a team of maybe with only 2 midfielders in there, we did get overrun a small bit, and maybe that is the worry with Kenny's 5 at the back and only 2 central midfielders, and that's maybe sometimes why he likes playing Jamie McGrath. Maybe that's why he brought him on at half time, to just give you a little bit more, because he can kind of play a bit deeper in that regard as well.
He definitely made a difference, I thought, just to almost link the play between the middle 2 and the front 2, because even in the home game against Azerbaijan, that first half, remember that young front 3 that started, wasn't Adam Ida, Troy Parrott, Aaron Conley? They almost seemed like they were playing a different game to the other 8 players on the Irish team. It was just too far away. So I suppose it's trying to find that balance, Kenny is. And yeah, like it's almost like the age-old debate with back 5. Like the back 5 covers you up massively, but then you lose that extra midfielder. So it's trying to get the balance right. And I suppose looking in that second half, I thought someone who played well throughout, just a solid maybe 7 out of 10 performance, was Josh Cullen. And we kind of mentioned him on the preview. It's amazing what regular football can do, and he's kind of been going about his business almost head down, playing every minute for Anderlecht as far as I can see in the league. I haven't watched any of the games obviously, but that's a massive positive, I guess. Jeff Hendrick, he did okay, I thought. Maybe got overrun at times, but maybe if a Jason Knight is fit, he could possibly slot in there, and maybe Jeff Hendrick plays further up the pitch. So there, like you said, there is maybe 1 or 2 more options we have now that you can start seeing a team. But it does look like that back 5 is here to stay. It's maybe we might need a Jamie McGrath as a link man, or maybe play Jason Knight alongside Jeff Hendrick and have maybe the 2 lads up front.
Yeah, so there is that element to it. I must say, I did think Josh Cullen has been one of Ireland's best players, certainly in this calendar year of internationals. And maybe it is one of the things with the Stephen Kenny era. Like I vividly remember one of his early press conferences, And one of the things I took away was how he mentioned how John Egan had so few caps at the age he had, and obviously it's shown how impressive or impressed Stephen Kenny's been with John Egan, that he's captain now ahead of the likes of Duffy and maybe McLean. And with Josh Cullen, just looking at it, like he's 25 now. He's played 19 times for Ireland, whereas a couple of years ago, the likes of Conor Howrahan were getting to 25, 26, and they hadn't played a lot of international football. And Robinson, again, he's 26. He's played 20 times now as well, I think. So we're starting to get these players in. They're going to have played regular international football, and they're going to hopefully hit their prime in the next few years. So you can't legislate for what's going to happen in the future, but that does seem like a little bit of a positive, because it did feel like, with the likes of Mick McCarthy and Martin O'Neill, maybe one of their downfalls was, they often went with the likes of they often went with the likes of Stephen Ward and Keogh and guys like Kieran Clark, maybe that were a little bit more experienced, had been a little bit more certainly Richard Keogh, maybe there was a time where John Egan was probably playing better club football in the championship with Brentford and Sheffield United, but they still went with Keogh because he gave you that little bit more, I suppose, experience. And to be fair to me, he never really let Ireland down. But that does seem like a big difference now, that they starting to, like I said earlier, find the basis of a squad that you can build off. And there's only, you mentioned earlier, there's only so many young players you can play and maybe get overawed or overrun, or just that little bit of bits of experience that Cullen and Robinson and Egan and guys like this. Shane Duffy's only 29, I think. I had to Google it the other day. So it does feel like if this squad can stay together for certainly the next qualification campaign, and that's obviously what Kenny has to be thinking now. He's got to be thinking, how do I get the best, 15, 16 players in a system that he knows for whoever we have the first game of the European qualification group. And if you had told me, 3-4 months ago in the summer when some of the internationals were going, I couldn't tell you what Ireland's best team is. But now it does seem like there is that kind of basis of it, and like there is little things that have to be improved on. James McLean made a couple of brilliant runs, forward from left wing back, and that's what we're going to need. And Doherty's done it as well, but that's what you need when you play five at the back and you only have the two midfielders. That you need your fullbacks, your wing backs really, really getting forward. And I thought certainly McLean was very good at that on Saturday night. And you're probably going to need a bit of that from Doherty going forward as well. And that just comes with, confidence. That comes with having a settled back three, as three centre backs behind you and a settled goalkeeper, that you can just make that more adventurous run and try and get into the box. And Doherty scored that goal against Denmark, getting into the box, and he's very good at that. He's done it for Wolves. So there is small little things for Ireland, and whatever you think about maybe Stephen Kenny and whether you think he's the right man for the job, but I have to say that squad is just slowly starting to take a bit of shape, and like there's still a long way to go. When we do start that qualification campaign, we got to hope likes of Robinson are back playing in the Premier League with the likes of Egan and all these kind of things, and Aaron Connolly settled at his club, and Adam Ida, because at the moment, you look at our three young attacking players that Kenny's trusted a lot. Adam Ida, is struggling. He's behind Timu Puki at the moment. Norwich look like they're going to be back down in the Championship. You've got Aaron Connolly, who Brighton are high flying. They've got good players in there at the minute. They've a settled 11, and it's going to be difficult for Connolly to break in there. Troy Parrott's on loan at MK Dons. Tottenham, there's a little bit of uncertainty with the manager, with Harry Kane, who's going to replace Harry Kane. So in a couple of years' time, obviously Stephen Kenny can't control that, but you're going to have to hope that these guys are settled with their clubs. But that starting 11 on Saturday night, I think we'll see quite a lot of them start the first game of the European qualifications, whenever it is next year.
Yeah, and you mentioned Shane Duffy being 29, which is extraordinary, but suddenly you have a really solid back three and a good mix of experience with Shane Duffy, prime of their career, and John Egan. And then Oma Bimidele, you have that kind of young passing centre-back but can also defend as well. But looking at that team then, does Seamus Coleman get back in at right centre-back or right wing-back? Or did we arguably look a small bit better with him just based on the formation as opposed to anything else? I guess you can rotate him and Doherty a small bit, but if you're talking about, a big game, maybe against Portugal if Seamus Coleman's back, who plays in that right wing back. And just before you come in on that, on the left wing back side of things, you mentioned James McLean had a great game. I suppose there was a decision there where a lot of people would have still picked Enda Stevens despite his performances from Ireland over James McLean. But I think the fact is, you mentioned you watched the Borough game, that he didn't play that well. Obviously, Stephen Kenny's been watching those performances as well, and he felt James McLean was the right man. And in fairness, McLean gets a lot of hate, himself and Jeff Hendrick do. But I thought McLean was outstanding in an overall sense on Saturday. So those kind of wing back positions are up for grabs, with Stevens and Coleman possibly coming in. But Doherty and James McLean are really stamping their authority on those two spots, because if we're going with a back five, those two positions are key, and you need someone to be getting up and down for 90 minutes.
Yeah, it is that. And like, obviously Darragh O'Shea had been really impressive for Ireland before his injury.
Jesus, yeah. Where does he come back in? Yeah, right,
and then
back, maybe.
You've obviously Nathan Collins, who just made his Premier League debut. So your hope there is that, you know, those two can learn from the likes of Duffy and Egan. You know, Duffy and Egan still have a lot of time left in the Ireland jersey. But it does seem like that department does seem to be, you know, we're pretty good, and we just maybe needed that settled back three, if you like, to go. In the wing back positions, yeah, look, I have to say I watched that Sheffield United game, and I thought Stevens was poor. And the thing, you know, he struggled with injury in the last while. Sheffield United haven't obviously had the best time of it. But McLean, you know, he was outstanding, I thought, on Saturday. Like, you know what you're going to get from him. But even defensively, I mean, he made a couple of big tackles. He covered in well. It was when Bazunu made one of the saves. McLean was right beside him to clear it away. And look, everyone knows, you know, he's had difficulties in his club career over the last couple of years with Stoke, and, you know, playing with Ireland when he was injured. And, you know, there's no doubt what he gives to the jersey, and he's so important for that. And I do feel like if he plays again like that, and has that attacking intent to get forward, then I think that really stands him aside from Enda Stevens at the minute. And obviously there's Ryan Manning, who, since moving to Swansea, we haven't seen the best of him after, you know, impressing under QPR. And in the right back position, look, I think Seamus Coleman, you know, he'll always be there or thereabouts. He's someone that won't let you down either. But there is that element that Matt Doherty really has filled into that position well, in the absence of Coleman, because there was always that discussion who's best to play what position. I wouldn't be surprised against Portugal if Coleman's fit to see him in there, because Portugal have a lot of, you know, tricky players like Fernandes and Bernardo Silva, and obviously Ronaldo, Diego Jota. So you're going to feel like the centre backs are going to be taken out from the middle a little bit more, and maybe Coleman's better in that position, maybe instead of Damabele, you know. But like, it does feel a little bit more settled. And Stephen Kenny has been known to kind of place his trust in these young players. So like I said, I do feel like that team on Saturday will see a lot more going forward. Maybe Conley in for Darragh Horgan, but one of the things that really worried me at the start at Stephen Kenny's time with Ireland was, I think in his first two games he had 6 different midfielders. And like, I know he was obviously searching for the winning platform, and he was kind of, you know, everyone knows he was trusted in there with not a lot of training time with the players, not a lot of time before that game against Slovakia. And he is, like I said, starting to build the basis of something. And what surprised me is obviously he's been very open with 5 at the back, because obviously he was very rigid with his 4-3-3 for a while with Dundalk and at the start with Ireland. But no, he's had to try new things, and it does feel like obviously 5 at the back suits these players a little bit more than maybe 4. But the one question is, we mightn't necessarily be good enough on the ball in midfield. Like, there was an incident in that second half where Ireland were just being run a little bit ragged, and the ball came to Hendrick, and he was facing his own goal. And, you know, if he had a little bit of composure, he could have taken it down and found a pass, because he had a bit of space, and he kind of cleared it straight to Azerbaijan. And that's the little bit of composure that you're probably missing in that regard. Maybe that's if we've one area midfield, like, you know, because we did get overrun, we're going to need that little bit more composure, and it's a difficult thing to do when your back's to goal, and to take the ball and try and drive forward with it or find a pass. The easy thing to do is clear it, and that was at the moment when the game was probably, especially in that second half, like, it did feel like Ireland were a little bit ragged, and that was just an incident I remember in the game, just going, if you can take a touch and try and settle the game down a little bit more. But you know that there is always going to be that element in midfield that, you know, teams, especially if they play three against our two in there, that they're going to overrun us.
Yeah, and my kind of memory of the game is like in the first half, at least 2 or 3 times giving the ball away in midfield and looking up, and our defense is too deep. So therefore, there was like 20 yards of space for Azerbaijan to go in, commit a defender, and then on the attack. So one thing you raised there is the switch to back 3 or the back 5 under Stephen Kenny, and a lot of people have kind of been linking that with Anthony Barry, who's obviously worked or is working under Thomas Tuchel in Chelsea. It's very hard to kind of outside the camp see what's going on behind the scenes, but there does seem to have been a shift to that, and there seems to be a lot more positive stuff coming out of the camp. Matt Doherty's comments and others from the specifically about the coaching. And we kind of like, there's still like a lot of questions as what exactly happened in terms of Damien Duff leaving the camp, Alan Kelly, was it the video, was it other stuff? But it has kind of settled down, in fairness, because if you remember when Anthony Barry was appointed, I remember thinking, what is going on here with all the switching and all this? But it does seem to settle down a small bit. There's a bit of hope that maybe Anthony Barry's doing a bit of work behind the scenes. Again, hard to know, but what's your kind of take on that and the switch to the back 5 then as a result?
Well, obviously, with Gavin Bazuna's performances as well, you've got to give a lot of credit to Dean Kiley, because obviously he came in and replaced Alan Kelly, who'd been there for a number of years.
And it was interesting. Kenny mentioned that in the interview straight away, didn't he?
Yeah, and I think Stephen Kenny's very good at that. And I do agree. Like, those comments we got from Matt Doherty were really pleasing, because obviously, you know, these guys, they know they're ultimately they're going to be judged on getting to World Cups and European qualification. So the easy thing would have been to, you know, some of those players to have thrown Kenny and what's happening under the bus a little bit. But they have, a lot of those players have kind of stepped up and taken responsibility. And with Anthony Barry, you know, no one really knows the extent of the work they're doing on the training ground, but we do seem to be a little bit more better. Like, we haven't played, if you look at the last 7 games, like, we've only lost 1, but we haven't played a lot of really good sides in that either. So the bigger tests are to come. There is no doubt about it. And ultimately, you know, I'd be starting to really come harshly on Stephen Kenny once the first couple of games of the European qualification campaign, because, you know, whatever about not qualifying for one campaign, you know, if you go into the second one and we're still having some of the problems that we've had, then, you know, there is an element of acting and finger pointing. But we do look a little bit more better. We do look better at the moment. But like I said, like, we haven't played a lot of great sides. But we are that little bit more solid. One thing is maybe just that little bit of bravery in midfield. And, you know, when with Chelsea play with 2 in there, obviously most of the time they've got N'Golo Kante or a Kovacic, and they cover the ground of maybe 2 midfielders. And that's the one thing with Hendrik. I don't necessarily he's quite a clever midfielder. You know, he is one of them guys who does get an awful lot of criticism because he might necessarily be the best on the ball, but he's quite clever in especially defensively, and that's obviously why Steve Bruce likes him as well. And Sean Dyche has played him. He's very good out of the ball, or without the ball, but he maybe doesn't necessarily have the energy that we might see from someone like a Jason Malumbi or a Jason Knight. And the problem with certainly Malumbi is he hasn't played an awful lot of football, and Jason Knight's had his injury problems, and he's been playing further forward with Derby as well. So, you know, you do feel like there maybe is a position in there for someone. Maybe not in the next 2 games because Hendrik has done okay, but like, that's the problem again with someone like Malumbi, like, because he did impress in a couple of his early games under Stephen Kenny, but, you know, his lack of game time is killing a lot of these players. And when they do get their chance, then that there's an awful lot of pressure on them. So with that, with Hendrik, with Cullen, like, we are susceptible to be getting overplayed midfield. And when we play Portugal, I think Jamie McGrath or Jason Knight might play in as one of the front three to kind of shore it up and have Robinson and Ida or Robinson and Connolly up there with the pace and try and hit them on the counter attack. But when you're playing Portugal, you are playing one of the best teams in the world. Where I want to see us improve is when we're playing a Slovakia or
Luxembourg to a certain extent.
Yeah, Luxembourg, one of the middle teams. International football is kind of three tiers. You've got the elite teams, the top 10 or 12 in qualification, and if you're lucky, there'll only be one in your group. If you're unlucky, there'll probably be two. And we've had that in the past with like Switzerland, Denmark, or we've been lucky in the past where we haven't had too many teams. Like we've had a Germany and then maybe an Austria or a Poland who are a kind of middle to top team. So we need to get better at playing the middle teams, really. I'm a big believer in sport. If you beat the teams that are going to be in and around where you are in a league table, then you have a better chance of finishing above them. And that's where ultimately I want to see us play when we go and play, Hungary away or games like this. So at the moment, we're not going to have a lot of them games until we played the Euros, but we're going to have to win away from home if we are to qualify for the Euros next year, and that's going to be ultra important, and that's where we can't necessarily get overrun in midfield.
Yeah, on the playing time side of things, I think there's no better example than looking at Gavin Bazunu getting the nod ahead of Queven Keller. Probably a coin flip, but just I'd say Kenny, he's just started playing at Rochdale. This is a couple of months ago. Let's put him in. To now, he's the well-established number one, and I am pretty excited that Queven Keller is getting the opportunity at Qatar. We'll go to the Qatar players in just a second, Sean, but a quick word on Agbane, who scored his first international goal. It was a brilliant, it was, like you said at the start of the show, it was great to actually get that third goal because I feel the second half performance deserved a 1-0 victory in the second half. But you must be delighted to see a player coming from League of Ireland, the jersey you're wearing there, and to kind of be able to make a name for himself. And now we managed to get him to play for Ireland. It's a huge moment for him. But he looks lively and he's a good option. He's been playing right mid a lot for Rotherham this season, so he's a good option. Although I know he's played right mid, but as soon as he was holding the ball up, I was saying to you, geez, there's an option at number 9. But it seems people more qualified than me are playing him right mid, so I might just stick with that. But
yeah, and it's been I suppose one of the, you even look at that Ireland side, a couple of those guys have come through the League of Ireland and have played up to 19 and 21 or even later in Dara Horgan's case, and then gone and played in the UK. And that has to be a route that there's going to be a road that's going to be more travelled in the next few years with all the Brexit regulations on football clubs with Irish players. I think it's clubs won't be able to sign Irish players until they're 18, I think, in certainly in some cases. So that's going to have to be a really important route. And players have done it. Your likes of Zach El-Zabuzi, who's playing in Sweden. Obviously Ogbene, the likes of Shawnee Maguire, Dara Horgan, guys like this. And it, like I said, we're going to see a lot more of it. Jamie McGrath as well at St. Mirren. So the national side is reflective of that. There certainly is a lot of loophole or a lot of downsides with the League of Ireland, but I think there is no doubt that there is a lot of high quality footballers, and maybe it's a case of that little bit of coaching or that little bit of luck to make it in the UK or to make it at a higher level. But I must say it is brilliant to see when he comes on. Like, I think often with subs, they come on and they kind of go through the motions. They find it hard to get into the game. I must say about Ogbene is, he's playing, he's there. He's a nightmare for defenders. Certainly at that stage of the game where you're a little bit tired, and he'll come in and he kind of bullies you around, and he has that pace, he has the strength. He won corners, he won a couple of free kicks as well. So that, Ireland need that off the bench. There's no doubt. Against Portugal, if we're to have any hope, we're going to need to have kept it tight and hopefully bring on something from the bench. And looking at that bench, you'd Connolly, Ogbene, you just had the Troy Parrott, Conor Howrahan. You had a little bit more quality there. So hopefully, there is a little bit more options. Obviously, not as many as maybe Kenny would like, but I did like that about Ogbene, that he came on and he made his presence felt.
Yeah, and on the League of Ireland, it's very important they drive home. I've seen a small bit of it, particularly maybe a couple of years ago. I don't know if I've seen much of it about who are the players that have come from the League of Ireland, the Ireland squad. Let's build a sort of a platform and a bit of social media about it, because I think a lot of people aren't, like the casual Ireland fan just isn't aware of where some of these players are coming from. You touched on a lot of the substitutions, Sean. So these are the players that were on the bench that might get a run against Qatar. Maybe give you the 3 or 4 lads that you're excited to see that didn't get a run out. So these are the unused subs. Enda Stevens, Nathan Collins, Cyrus Christie, Kelleher, who's going to start the Qatar game tomorrow, Harry Arthur, James Collins, Aaron Connolly. They're the outfield players, and obviously Kelleher as well. So who for you, is there 1 or 2 that will get a run? Are you excited to see get a run? Would it be a back 5, potential for a back 4 given the players there, or what are you thinking?
Well, I like I really want to see Kelleher because, like,
he's amazing. Sorry,
yeah,
I keep drumming the
you
Gavin Bazuna, but Kelleher is
you forget how
sensational.
good
Yeah.
and obviously he's played Champions League for Liverpool. He's a brilliant penalty saver. He saved a number of penalties. They played famously a Liverpool Arsenal Carabao Cup game. He saved the penalty to win it in front of the Kop. And I think with the whole, I'm not quite sure on this, but I think with the whole restrictions on Brazilian players, or I think he might have a chance of playing next week in the league unless that gets changed.
Yeah.
So like, and with Kelleher, he was just a little bit unlucky. Do you remember it was that game Travers played in goal, and I can't remember if he was injured or he wasn't available, and all of a sudden just Bazunu's got in and it's been faultless since. And if you're Caoimhín Kelleher, you're going, look, I'm not a bad goalie. I played at a higher level than Bazunu has. It's just that happens in sport, that little bit of time, but he is phenomenal. Really, you do forget how good he is. And
Just
Kenny,
before you move
Stephen
on from
Kenny
Kelleher,
mentioned it in his press conference that he played 10 times under him for the 21s, and he was one of the under 21 standout player. I mean, we were at a couple of the games. A lot of people will have seen it when the 21s were playing. He was brilliant in his distribution as well. So and like I have to give Mark Travers a mention because obviously he had a very difficult time in that game against Mitrovic. But he was I watched one of the games they played. I can't remember who it was against, but Travers was outstanding for Bournemouth. And for him to get his feet in, because it's been a difficult time at Bournemouth. He's had to bide his time. Ramsdale came in, and then Begovic got back in last year, and obviously Scott Parker's there, and he's trusted Travers a little bit more. So we've got 3 really, really high level goalkeepers, which he always seem to do, produce. But I'm really looking forward to seeing Kelleher as well.
Yeah, I guess on the Kelleher side of things, there's question marks whether he should have gone on loan this season, maybe to a Premier League club. Like, there's talk next year that, and now maybe I was just watching a Liverpool podcast at the wrong time, but there was talk that, next year he could go on loan. Like he's not at Courtois level back in the day, but like that sort of loan into European side, continental. There's been 1 or 2 kind of rumors going around. If they decide to maybe have Adrian as a backup next year, and maybe give Kelleher Champions League football or Europa League football, but he does need to start playing soon, because you can sit on Liverpool's bench all day long, but you're not going to develop if you're not playing games. It's the old age, and which is why ultimately Bazuna is still playing.
Well, you need to learn from your errors, and that's another important part. I mean, Gavin Bazuna made one for Rochdale last season, I think it was. There was a clip going around where I think he just kind of got caught with the ball under his feet, and obviously that's a very important part, because when you're doing that for Rochdale and you're going back into the dressing room, and these got those players at League 1, League 2 level probably aren't getting the sums of money that you think they are, and you're looking around the dressing room and you have to play for your supper, if you like, and there's a lot more pressure on you. Whereas if you go out on an academy game and you make that mistake, nothing said really about it. So I remember, there's been a lot of cases of goalkeepers doing it. Dean Henderson had a brilliant loan spell at Sheffield United. 2 years he's come back and he's not got a kick, with De Gea. So he's obviously going to be looking for a loan. You've someone like, I remember Chesney going on loan to Brentford. Keepers need loan spells at the lower level. They need to learn how to handle that pressure. And I'm no doubt Kelleher is good enough to be a Premier League goalkeeper in the next couple of years, but he's got to build up his experiences.
Yeah, absolutely. Any final thing then on the Irish team in general? You seem pretty excited, maybe Qatar game aside. The players we have to come back, there's 1 or 2, like Coleman and stuff like that. But any final thoughts on Ireland going forward, and maybe the Stephen Kearney era? I think we've kind of covered a lot of it, but it is amazing what a result does. It was lovely and peaceful on Twitter, and we could just talk about a game and Ireland winning a game. It is brilliant. I've kind of missed that, and I think it kind of collects the it brings the nation together for that 90 minutes. And if we have a team that we're playing a few young players that wouldn't ordinarily get in under previous management, it does give that little bit more of a new feel to it. But any final thoughts before we head off?
Yeah, and I wouldn't say I'm massively excited, but I would say I'm a little bit more confident and content with the system at the moment. And like, obviously Portugal's going to be an incredibly tough game, and next international break's going to be big for Ireland. But we have to find some way of starting the next qualification campaign in a way better position than we started this one, or how we finished this one. And that comes from a lot of things. That comes from having the settled coaching staff that they have now. That comes from the guys we've mentioned that haven't played a lot, Conley, Malumbi, Parrott, guys like this that have to go out and get those loan experiences. And obviously in Parrott's case, he's had a really successful loan at the start of this year with MK Dons. So like there is those things to it. And yeah, look, I'm going to the game tomorrow night, and I think it's brilliant that obviously like there's 20 odd thousand. They've made tickets quite accessible for a lot of fans, and hopefully we score a few goals, and we just keep that winning momentum, and we win 2 in a row for the first time under Kenny. It'd be interesting to see what he does with Will Keane, because I think it would be weird to maybe not play him, especially in a friendly where they can bring on players willy-nilly. But yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing Ireland.
Yeah, he didn't make the matchday squad, I think, which is why he's not on that list. So yeah, he should make this
one.
Him
and Jason Knight, yeah.
Yeah, and Jason Knight. Is Jason Knight going to be fit for Tuesday? I don't think so, is he? Or
I think he might be. I saw he was training today.
That's good. That's good.
Yeah, and he gives you something else, and maybe that him in there can maybe force Ireland to a back four.
Yeah, and again, it'd be important to adapt with the formations. Troy Parrott, last thing, and MK Dons there. Spurs, there was kind of a report there that Spurs coaching staff are quietly impressed, and they want him to replace Kane or be that number 2 to Kane. I know we've heard a lot of that before, but it is positive that he had to drop down to League One to play a bit of football, but it seems to be going well. There's a few assists, few goals, and just a bit of MK Don's Twitter's telling me he's doing all right. Anyway, the official account. Anyway, thing to cover. Go on,
he couldn't have picked the worst club with Ipswich, because Ipswich were in turmoil last year for his loan spell, and he kind of didn't score a lot of goals, and then in the end kind of got a couple of goals, but they were in complete turmoil last year. And MK Dons, despite having a new manager, Russell Martin's gone now to Swansea, but he's got a couple of goals, and that's important for him. Whether he's going to be replacing Kane anytime soon, I'm not sure, but he'll find his feet, I'm sure, and he's an important player for Ireland going forward as well.
Absolutely. Final thing there, we had Aoife Wade on the podcast from Whitehall, and the clash with the LGFA and the Camogie, having to forfeit their league game. They actually won the hurling Camogie intermediate final, which is a good news story there. Stephen Duff, who's Portlaoise ladies manager at the moment, he's kind of told us about a couple of issues. We'll be hoping to get him on for maybe a similar video this week as well, to have a chat, because Sean, I know you kind of missed that one, but the LGFA Camogie Association, they're at each other. That'll all be on Attacking Sport, be in your podcast feed. If not, we'll be back with a full episode next Monday on the podcast. But yeah, do subscribe to our YouTube channel. We appreciate you listening. Attacking Sport, all social media. And other than that, have a good week. And cheers, Sean, thanks for coming on, and enjoy the Qatar match.
Cheers, thanks.
No worries. Chat to you soon, guys.